I wish to deal with a few issues before I address some campaign-related ones. And I guess yesterday we were all a bit surprised when we saw this announcement about a new Marriott being constructed in Guyana. It came out of the blue, and let me just say that we in the People's Progressive Party, we welcome investment in hotels, new hotels, and we welcome investors to Guyana. But what was surprising about this is the secrecy through which the whole arrangement or deal was struck. And so we sought to get some answers about what the land deal was all about, how many acres were given to the investor, and at what price, not just for the hotel, but the surrounding areas. And I hope that you ask those questions today when they have the sod-turning ceremony about the land, how many acres total, not just for the hotel complex, but I gather there are other lands given for housing and other issues, just close to the area where the project is being built. From what I gather too, no environmental permit has been issued. So the government talk about this project starting next month, in March, is designed for campaign purposes because there is no environmental permit as yet. I'm not sure other permits apart from the environmental permit, building permits, etc., have all been given. We've also sought to find out whether Marriott has officially approved this, because it's a laborious process that we had to go through to get Marriott to agree to use their brand in Guyana, and whether they have officially approved this investment or the use of their name. Now, this is vital, and I wish to contrast what took place in the development of the Marriott that is 100% owned by the people of Guyana, that is at Kingston. It's 100% owned by Guyana, the government and people of Guyana. But the challenges that we faced in building that Marriott, and when you hear just some of the headlines that I would read out to you about how difficult it was and how much scrutiny that project went through, you would see that some of the very players in government, how duplicitous they have been. So let me just give you, we have a lot of, in this document, which we'll share later, the challenges to the development of the Guyana Marriott project. I'll share it with you. But I'll just give you a sample of the headlines that we showed the duplicity of this government. So on the 27th of May, 2014, Ramjatan, Marriott Hotel is born of fraud. Gives rise to justifiable fair suspicion of kickbacks, Kaieteur News. The April 14, 28th of April 2014, Marriott Hotel controversy. APNU intends to flush out secret investor, Granger, Kaichur News. 4th of October 2013, interdict Winston Brassington, APNU, Kaichur News. 29th of June 2030, Desmond Trotman moves to block transfer of Marriott Hotel land. 24th of February 2013, Marriott is a brazen corrupt exercise, Ramjatan, Kaichur News. 15th of February 2013, opposition pickets Marriott site. 4th of October 2013, APNU warns Marriott financiers, Tabuk News. 5th of July 2013, NISIL defense of Marriott land lease, oceanfront property is not comparable to industrial sites, AFC, Kaichur News. 14th of February 2013, AFC wants Marriott feasibility study to be made public. Nigel Yu says country going back to colonization. Building a Marriott is going back to colonization. That's Nigel Yu's. 20th of May 2012, Marriott Hotel is an inflated project and a money laundering machine. 4th of April 2012, APNU will demand that NISIL be brought to books Greenwich. 25th of March 2012, AFC, even more convinced now that the Marriott Hotel not feasible and taxpayers could be ripped off. Kaichur News. So I have about 30 other similar comments over a period of several years since the feasibility study was done, showing the scrutiny that we had to go through to build the Marriott, which is 100% owned by the people of this country. And Harman saying Marriott is a choke and rob deal. That is Harman here, saying choke and rob deal. They then went to court, APNU, and filed 2 court cases to block the Marriott from being built, filed by Desmond Trotman. Badal from the Pegasus also went to court to block the Marriott being built. In fact, Mr. Badal said he was saying that, I think I have it written somewhere, that the feasibility, that the Marriott Hotel wouldn't be able to pay the interest costs. The new Marriott would not be able to pay even interest costs on their loans because he was opposed to the building of the new Marriott. This is what he said on Sunday, October 13, 2013. Marriott would not even be able to cover interest costs, Robert Badal from Change Guyana, who was with them at that time. Now, this is one of the most profitable Marriotts in the world, the one that we have here in Guyana. It's covering all its costs and it's doing extremely well. But this just shows you the level of scrutiny and the hurdles that we had to overcome in getting that Marriott built. And the same people who are saying it's a choke and rob operation, now Harman is a member of the NISIL board. He claimed that the Marriott was a choke and rob operation, but NISIL has now secretly done this and sprung it on us just yesterday. And as far as I know, they don't have a formal approval from Marriott yet. Environmental permits, etc., have not been given. We don't know how many acres of land and at what price they were sold. So I hope that you look into this. And the gold standard of this whole issue was what we had when we had the sod turning ceremony, because the vice president from Marriott came to Ghana, and his name is Andrew Horton. He came and participated with me in the sod turning ceremony that we had. Now, I'm sure that today you are not going to have a representative of Marriott at this turning ceremony. And the reporters who go there this afternoon should ask why isn't Marriott here formally represented? Because the brand normally is formally represented when they do sod turning, like what happened when we turned the sod for the Marriott at Kingston. So I'm not going to speak much more about this. I think it fits in ideally with the lack of transparency in this government. And up to the day of election, they will continue to do the corrupt deals. The corrupt deals. They're trying, we saw another one about lands at Wales given out for cold storage facility now. Granger is promising the land to the sugar workers, that's what he said, but all the land has been practically given out at Wales. To whom, we don't know. They did the same thing with the factory, they sold it off. To whom, we don't know. The lands, there are several other people, big investors, not investors, cronies, who have gotten land from the whole East Coast and East Bank. The sugar lands that were closed that we are hoping to use for the development of housing for people here in Region 4 and other regions. They've given that away. One of the members on their list, the list of candidates, got 150 acres, and he's trying to flip the land now before the elections. 150 acres just around the Ogle area. So all of this is happening. It's happening wantonly. And therefore, we will see this happen, continue to happen. This new low standard of accountability being set by APNU until election day, acts of corruption. But I can promise you that within 2 weeks of the change of government, that every Guyanese will know who received these lands, how they received them, at what price they paid for the land, and all the lands that were given out through corrupt deals we'll take back to provide the housing that we promised the people, low-income housing, 50,000 house lots, right here in this region and other regions across the country. I want to promise them that. And we are going to not just investigate a lot of these other issues, but the illegalities that have been committed in December with the 80 odd contracts they've signed for worth billions of dollars. Even Gulsaran, who has been friendly with them since he was part of their team in 2015, I saw him put out an article in the Starbuck News pointing out to all the illegalities of these contracts, over 80 of them that were approved by the cabinet in December of this year. So this is the new standard, and corruption will continue until that day. The next thing I want to address is the oil and gas sector. So APNU has gone into a spin mode, and I suspect they are supported by the oil companies. I heard that some oil companies have even paid consultants to come and work with APNU in developing the spin messages to divert people's attention away from the Global Witness report and from the other transgressions that took place in the contract negotiations, and not just transgressions, but confusion. So some of the foreigners are here now, paid by the oil companies to help them with their PR. And they've been going around with them to various places. So predictably, they had to denigrate the Global Witness organization. So they put out an ad and call it Global Wickedness. And then they started quoting the Rystad study and a whole range of other incestuous studies that suit them, studies that are favorable to oil companies, done by organizations that get their bread and butter from the oil companies. So that's what they've been using to try to discredit the Global Witness estimates, etc. But from what I see is that Open Oil, which did some of this estimate for Global Witness, they were prepared to make public their model as to how they came up with these figures, unlike Rystad and the others, whose models have remained secret. But all this spin will not divert our attention from the magnitude of the lopsided agreement and how much Guyanese probably lost in those negotiations. They would not divert us from the clear picture painted of corruption and confusion, where Trotman refused experts' advice because the experts' advice was, or the experts' advice were tendered, advices were tendered to them. And he, over the weekend, ignored these. Secondly, it will not hide the fact that they rushed to sign this agreement, and not because of a fear of Exxon pulling out because of the Venezuela's claim, as the Prime Minister said, but because Exxon put some pressure on them and they caved to the pressure. And they rushed to sign the agreement, and it will not divert Guyanese attention from the conclusion of the report, which said that the link between Trotman and Nigel Hughes, who was on the other side, on the side of the oil company, must be investigated for conflict of interest. Those things are pretty clear, and they paint a troubling picture. But what is even worse is that the government commissioned its own report, and in that report, it conflicts with even what Global Witness said, because they said Trotman negotiated this contract on his own. But clearly, Trotman now, in an attempt to absolve himself, said he took a memorandum to the cabinet, and the cabinet approved the memorandum. But what is even more worrying for Guyanese, and so not just worrying but troubling, is that in the document that Trotman prepared, paid for by the government to counteract the damning report, the Global Witness report, it says here that the first draft of the cabinet memorandum was done by the contractors, Exxon. So can you imagine the government, which looks out for our interests, and they're in a negotiation with the company, then gets the company to prepare the first draft of our negotiating strategy, the government's negotiating strategy. This is criminal, purely criminal. And that went to the cabinet, and Granger, he hides from everything. He's silent on this and everything else that matters to us. He's just silent. Can you imagine the huge giveaway, and he acts as though nothing has happened. He takes no responsibility. He has to answer for this. His own report said he, as the chair of the cabinet, approved this. A memorandum where the first draft was prepared for, which is the first draft of our negotiating position. Guyana's negotiating position, the first draft of it was prepared by the company with which we were negotiating. Is this not the height of incompetence and callousness? And that is what Granger has to answer for. He's busy talking all over on the campaign trail about all sorts of inconsequential things. But he would never answer about his cabinet memorandum that went, and he approved it. So he approved this deal, although he said subsequently he didn't even read it, the contract. So that is a crucial matter for us. But now they have been caught. So Ramjatan, in his arrogance, went around the countryside and said, oh, you all, you know, this is a typical thing. They used it in Parliament when we had a no confidence motion. Oh, 33 is greater than 32. Bring it on. You heard their language. Well, Ramjatan, in the typical arrogant style of the APNU AFC ministers, said, you don't like this deal that we signed? You go and form your own political party and negotiate a better deal. That is what he said, the arrogance of it all. So Guyanese must not question the giveaway deal. You know, if they're questioning it, they must form their own political party and compete against them. So, having had a backlash from that, they put Ramjatan now to give an answer, and I see they have a sponsored post on Facebook with Ramjatan talking about the deal. So he is the face. Neither Trotman is saying anything about it, gone quiet, and Granger is even worse, silent. But Ramjatan is placed now to give an answer. So what is Ramjatan's answer? Ramjatan said, oh, we got a great deal. And guess what? In the video, guess what pops up again? The same Reichstad study. And then he says, and he lies with a straight face, which he's prone to do. Like when he told the sugar workers they were never going to close any estate in 2015. He lies with a straight face, and he says, the World Bank and the IMF told us we got a good deal. That is not true. Blatant lie. The models run by these organizations showed they're closer to what the global witness, their ideal model, where what we should have gotten is closer to what Global Witness has said as a percentage of the total take. And then Ramjatan says, oh, we got 50% of the profit oil, and we got the 2% royalty, and when you add the 18%, the 18 million bonus and some withholding tax, utter nonsense. This guy doesn't know about any model, financial projection models. He thinks he's just going to put this all together and it comes up to 60%. It is nonsense. And this is the same 18 million that they thought was a gift. And they can't tell us how we got 18, how we negotiated for a figure of 18 million. Because the Minister of Finance doesn't know. Yet he was part of the cabinet that approved the negotiating position of the government. But he doesn't know. So, utter nonsense from Ramjatan. Utter nonsense. He doesn't know anything about financial models. They just put him out there to talk nonsense, and he falsely claims that the World Bank and the IMF agree with them. Falsely claims that. So he then says, oh, we're waiting on this money, the typical thing, they're waiting on oil money for everything. But the reality is that we're only going to get about $300 million a year for the first 4 years. So they're creating this impression that everything could be done. So I saw now Granger, after taking away money from the school kids, now is saying that he wants to, after the PPP promised to give all of our school children the $50,000 per year in assistance, he suddenly has come back and said he wants to do this too. But Ramjatan has a different take. Ramjatan believes this money, limited money, must go to infrastructural works. So the bridge across the Demerara River. Now, we thought that Patterson was going to build that bridge even without the oil money, that they were trying to get it financed. But now they're waiting on oil money, a new lie to people, because the oil money would not be enough to build the bridge and to do all the things that he lists here. But to look at the stupidity of it, he said, oh, we want to build a bridge, and the bridge will be on pillars like in Canada, as though we can put them on a pointer. You know, it's like crazy things, you know, it would be on pillars like in Canada. And then he says, oh, we want to build broad asphalt roads in Guyana. Well, the one we can build these things without having to wait for oil and gas money, like the East Coast Road that started under the PPP. And then he speaks about land expansion at MMA, how they're doing a study for phase 2. But guess what? They've already given out all of the lands, or most of the lands in phase 2. They've given the last chairman of MMA got 2,000 acres, and the current one got 10,000 acres. And another AFC member just 475 acres. So he's going to do that. They're going to put in the infrastructure, use the taxpayers' money for their cronies again, because ordinary people, farmers, will not benefit from this. And the same thing with Blackbush Polder. He says, oh, we are extending land, the land at the back of Blackbush Polder. Right now, I went to Blackbush Polder a couple of weeks ago, and because they cut all the budget from drainage and irrigation, people don't have water now for their crops. But he's talking about that's where they're going to spend the oil money. It's another fraudulent thing. They just put him there to repeat a ton of nonsense. A ton of nonsense. So anybody who looks at that should see how far from the reality of life in Guyana his comments are. And he's a front for making excuses now for this oil deal that was struck. And so people should not ever fall prey to this issue. Now there are lots of things that, because the time, I don't want to deal with them, but if you go through the report itself, the two reports, the Clyde and Company report and the Global Witness report, there's so many technical issues that we have to get resolved. We've made it clear, as I said before, a lot of these things have to be fixed. And so I gather they came out with a local content policy now, and I've just had a quick glance at it, and it looked like the oil companies wrote it for them too. This looks like oil company hands are in this. So my thing is that people should not even pay attention to this at this point in time. They're just rushing because they're failed Guyanese. They failed Guyanese. Oh, as it stands now, the deal will not work in favor of our people. And that has to be fixed. We see the ERC today, the Code of Conduct for Political Parties was signed, and we intend to abide by the provisions of this Code of Conduct. We have made it clear that people should refrain, any speaker who speaks about people's gender or their race or religion on the platform, any PPP speakers will be sanctioned by our party, chastised by, and publicly denounced. I hope that Apnew and Granger can say, just as I'm saying here, the same issue. He talks about it in veiled language, etc. And so, even as we see this, this speaks about the use of threatening language, disrupting other parties' activities, tearing down their flags, etc. Just last night, we had the leaders, many leaders of APNU, who urged people in Golden Grove to break up a meeting that we've had. We have the video there. Many of the leaders there. So even as though when they're signing these agreements, last night there was an organized activity to break up the meeting at which Wanegel was speaking, Bishop Wanegel and Gillian Burton. They are desperately fearful that the people of Golden Grove will hear our messages, and many other communities will hear our messages. Because when we go to platforms, we don't cuss down individual all night long. You don't hear that in the PPP meetings or rallies. We don't cuss down individuals and make our message about them. We talk about our achievements in government, their failures, how they failed all the people of Guyana, and what our plans are for the future. And they're worried about the failures, that when people listen to our speakers expose the corruption and incompetence that's taking place in this government, they would have a revulsion for voting for APNU. And they're fearful that people will hear our positive messages and accede and support them. That is why they do not want us to go and carry the message in some communities. So they get the mobs to go and break up the area. I know Golden Grove because I used to teach at Cove and John. People here from Golden Grove, most of them, would want to hear these messages. But they wouldn't want to run a gauntlet of rowdy, organized protesters. And that is what they have done, and they signed this agreement. So this is typical APNU. At the beginning of the agreement, it says that the leadership and membership of the undersigned parties agree to uphold the provisions of the Constitution of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, with specific reference to the following articles and acts. 38G, and guess what is 38G? The first one, public service to be free from political influence. So we saw the head of the Lands Survey now campaigning with Harman openly. We saw the head of the EPA on a platform campaigning. We've seen many, I can list how many leaders there. The Chronicle is a campaign arm of the APNU, funded by taxpayers. NCN and the other state media are the same thing. The government information system, the same thing. DPI, they call it now, yes. This is it. All of it. And the first article quoted in this code of conduct is public service to be free from political influence. And the public service that these stations are supposed to provide, because they're funded from taxpayers, that public service is no longer there. They become tools of APNU. So last week I saw Chronicle saying, lying, quoting themselves as saying Irfan Ali and I did not submit our statements to the Integrity Commission in 2018. It's a blatant lie. But they're trying to cover up for Granger, who was not submitted for 5 years. They're trying to do that. Then the NCN carried a story that the congressmen who came here had a conflict with the ambassador because they said that the government was not illegal or unconstitutional. That's fabricated from a hack of the APNU, Rickford Burke. That's a fabrication, and they carry these things. On a daily basis, the lies, the veiled racism, all by the state media. So I hope that now that they've signed on to this today, that APNU has signed on to it, that we will see a change in the state media. And secondly, that the ERC will now start calling out the state media for what they have been doing, and the DPI, for taking openly partisan positions. All the material, etc., are generated, their campaign material, by the state media. Then another one here is Article 147, protection of freedom of assembly, association, and demonstration. Well, we couldn't freely assemble in Golden Grove yesterday because people were chased out of that area. And I saw the same thing happening in Region 10, where Mark and Edge Hill were Mark Phillips and Edge Hill were going to some meetings there, and they were passing there, and they portrayed this as though the bauxite workers chased out Mark and Edge Hill, but it wasn't true. It's a couple of loud APNU supporters waving flags, very, very aggressive and boisterous. That is what's happening, because they did not want them to even talk to the workers, because had they spoken to the workers, they would have exposed the incompetence and neglect of this government that could possibly have led to all of the 900 workers losing their jobs, and the silence of David Granger about 900 people losing their jobs. You know, he's always silent on these issues. When our people need him most, he as president is silent. When the 500 persons are laid off at Barama, he was silent. When Troy lost 300 jobs, he was silent too. Silent on the ExxonMobil contract. On the big issues, he's always silent. And this is a president who is an executive president, not a ceremonial president. So I hope that now the ERC issue this code of conduct has been signed, that we see enhanced monitoring from the ERC and some more aggression on their part to deal with some of these transgressions, and that the parties themselves will, especially APNU, that has been threatening and bullying people, that they will change their behavior. Now, consistent with what I've said, so I just want to consider what just said about Granger, because he gets offended when we criticize him. And as I said before, it's his policy making. We don't have anything personal against him. It is his policy making. He's not doing the right thing for our country, not generating jobs. He's not looking out for us in these negotiations. He's not protecting our workers. And he broke all of his promises. And now again, so he goes to the Linden and says to people, the young people, not to smoke marijuana and to cultivate certain plants. And generally, I will support a statement like that. This is a good statement, etc. But it exposes not a word about the decriminalization of small quantities of marijuana. It exposes the lies that they've been telling to people. Because when this issue came up and one of their MPs decided to table a motion in the Parliament, Mr. Carrington, a number of people came to see me, including from the AFC. And I said to them, listen, we have been consistent on this position. In the 2015 manifesto, we made it clear. We are not in favor of legalizing the cultivation of marijuana, but we are in favor of decriminalizing small quantities. That is that people should not go to have a mandatory sentence of 3 years if they're found with, say, 1 cigarette. And we did this because we thought that there could be discretion on the part of the magistrates, etc. But many claim that they're hamstrung by the law. So we said, the party put that in its manifesto in 2015. And I said, I will allow a vote of conscience once the bill comes to the parliament. And personally, I will vote in favor of decriminalizing small quantity. I can't force our MPs out to vote. This would be a vote of conscience, like we had on some other big issues, like death penalty and stuff. But this one, I personally feel, because we can, if we lock away, these are people, you can have alternative sentence. You should get those people into rehab and other things, rather than lock them away for one small cigarette, when the big guys are running free. The big guys are running free. So that was our position. You know, they opposed it totally. They were lying to the Rastas and saying to them that they're in favor of it. But for 2-3 years passed and nothing happened. They didn't move the bill. They put an asterisk next to it, and it stayed dormant on the order paper in the National Assembly. After Parliament stopped functioning, they then said they want to do it, knowing that they didn't have to do it because you couldn't pass the bill at that time. But with Granger, the only reason they have not been able to do it is Granger is opposed to it, totally opposed to it. But they lie to the Rastas all the time. Up to a few weeks ago, I talked to one man and he said to me, the APNU supports this. Not just Rasta, but many people. APNU supports it. And I said to them, but look at their action. Look at what Granger says. So it is like another broken promise, another lie that they tell to the communities, and you see it coming out with what Granger said at Linden. People need to understand that they lie conveniently around election time. Conveniently lie. The Starbuck News report says, Granger lays out youth program to Linden. And what is this youth program? It speaks about the Linden Enterprise Network, LEN, that they gave some loans through LEN. And I'm thinking, is this the youth program? Because the LEN came out of a project that I started since I was in the Ministry of Finance, an area study that I led a team to do for Region 10. We applied for a grant from the European Union. We got a grant. And then we established the LEAP, the Linden Economic Advancement Project. That was what it was called, the LEAP. And the LEAP had several features. We were supposed to put in infrastructure to open up more land. So we built a road into West Watuka so that we can open up agricultural lands and put more people to work there, young people and others, and to improve food supply in Linden. Secondly, we established a business incubator, and several small businesses could have found offices in there to start their small businesses. Thirdly, we established LEN, this same program that Granger touts now, which is a small loans for businesses. And with that was very successful too. Then we built the call center to employ nearly 100 persons. So he now touts this at a rally in 2020, a project that I started some 15 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, and that has been functioning all along. In fact, under the PPP, the head of the LEN program was one of his ministers now, Valerie Patterson. So he comes and says, look what I did for you. I created a lens. Either he doesn't know, but I suspect he doesn't know because he doesn't look into these detailed issues. And so he thinks he's done a great job there, but it's a PPP thing. And then he talks about, wants to bring back the national service. That is his plan for for Linden and young people? Where are the jobs? They destroyed the jobs of disappeared. Less people are working now. In Region 10 now, 900, maybe not 900 because some are the other side, maybe about 700 workers would lose their jobs now because of his government incompetence. That's 700 more unemployed. The forestry operators in that region have lost jobs. The miners who work from Linden and go around the country, not just Linden, from Anns Grove, Golden Grove, Victoria, Men Paradise, all of those who were working in the bush now had to leave there and come out because they can't find a job. And because of their taxation policy that has damaged mining. And he lays out what plan? What plan? And he talks about, he says to the people, do you want to bring back the PPP? Well, what the PPP did in Linden, you know. We built new housing schemes, thousands of new houses. We fixed roads. We built a new hospital, new water treatment plant. We put in place the loan program, what I just mentioned, etc. We were actually trying to undo the neglect. So, and he says, I'm a dreamer, but my dreams are prophecies which turn into realities. That is what Granger said. Well, he was dreaming and he prophesied that we'll get free education, but the fee went up 35% in his tenure. And he prophesied more jobs, and we lost 30,000. And it's unbelievable that this is the sort. So coming to these issues, the other issue I want to talk about, because they're very worried about when I speak about elections. And so I saw them saying, now Chronicle again, Jagdeo accused of setting stage to challenge elections results, cast doubts on GCOM in front of West Dem supporters. So let me tell you precisely what I've been doing. APNU is fearful. They keep moving crowds from one area to the other. They know they can't fool the people of the area. The Linden crowd, 200 buses. It took an hour to cross the bridge, nearly. They're moving people. In Lethem now, they are moving large numbers of people, but not just that, but by inducement. Bringing some even from Region 8, from Madia, and from Linden, taking them up to Lethem, taking people all the way. That is just to create this veneer that they are getting crowds. So they even tried to stop the bridge, shut down the bridge on the day we had, every time we have a rally, for example, in Region 2, the boat ran aground. Then on the day we had a rally in Region 3, the bridge was closed it opened in the morning, and then they opened it back again during the course of the day when I was going across. It didn't bother us too much because we're now bringing tons of people from outside the region. So they thought they would affect us. The same thing happened in Bartica, moving people up and down. So they know what's going on. And they know that they have their polls. They would come up with fake polls, but they know what the real polls are, what they show, that there's a PPP victory, and not a small one. So they are now, to feed this sense of hope, they have been saying that we have a plan. So some of their supporters are saying, no worry with the PPP support and rally, we have a plan to take the elections. But I've been pointing out, what I've been saying to people is that we should be vigilant, but that every stage of the game, their plan to tamper with the election results, that every stage of the game it has been thwarted. From the appointment of the chair of GCOM that Granger did unilaterally in violation of the Constitution, and the CCJ had to remove him, to the house-to-house exercise, to the attempt to merge 37,000 with the voters list, to all of these changes. They have attempted to to do something to tamper with the list. And even up to now, they're talking about trying to cast doubts on the number of people in the list. But if, as the Chief Justice ruled, which was upheld by the Court of Appeal that Basil lost a couple of days ago, that you cannot move people, remove people because they have migrated. They just can't vote. But their names, if they come back to Ghana and they are listed, they can vote in the division. They can't vote abroad. The Chief Justice ruled that. The Court of Appeal upheld it. Therefore, the list will have people who have migrated too. And that is why we said that the numbers given that are not unusual. So, but they're trying to they're the ones who are trying to cast doubt on the list now and stuff like that. We have issues, specific issues that we try to correct every time we make a suggestion. When they said, all right, the 16,000 through the house to house that we said shouldn't be added because it went past the claims and objection period, we said, all right, we'll concede because if they're new people, let's verify them and put them on the list. We don't want to disenfranchise anyone. We found a solution to it. Similarly, we were opposed to the changes to the addresses of people, but when they did it, we said, all right, we're going to check it on the ground. There are a few people who might be displaced. We're making arrangements to move them. So I have laid out a positive agenda. I spoke glowing terms about the presence of the international technical assistance within GCOM. I spoke about international observers, and I spoke about our vigilance on election day. How is that setting the stage for challenging the results? Who are the ones who constantly try to disenfranchise people? It was the GCOM commissioners. Throughout it all, the GCOM commissioners, on Tuesday, Harman submitted 200 names and said, these are our supporters and they're left off the list. And he wants, all along, you couldn't touch the OLE, the certified OLE. He wants them to be added. And then GCOM checked, and the 200 people are on the list. He had it wrong. Up to now, they're trying. And who are the ones who tried to cause people to lose their right to vote if they didn't pick up their ID cards? They're the ones. So anybody who's trying to tamper, it would be APNU, because they believe that's the only way that they could win the elections. The number of people in local government elections, they just got over 70,000 votes. If they double that number, that's 150,000 votes. If you double local government election number, which is a tall order to do, how are they going to get to the 200,000 votes you need to win the elections? It's almost impossible, because a lot of people are totally disillusioned. They think people who they have stomped on, neglected, like in Sophia and South Georgetown, up to now people come in here all the time and talk about the neglect. They think that people, just because they claim, oh, the PPP is bad, and bring up old rumors and some frivolous thing about, challenging lawsuit about Irfan Ali certificate and all this nonsense, that they're going to distract people from what is important. What is important is the jobs and low-income housing and better health care and cost of living. Those are the important things. So anybody has to do any rigging would be this bunch. I'm not going to go through all of these other issues here, except to say that they're running along consistent with this. They deliberately started circulating something. A man spoke on a tape and says, dear sis, I know some people trying PPP, buying votes, spending $100 million to buy 150 votes. Pure nonsense. It's being circulated on the WhatsApp and stuff. A lot of people, oh, the PPP is trying to buy votes. And they called some people's name, which is dangerous because those people could be targeted. And they said, oh, the kids in Belladrum. But the kids in Belladrum can make up their own minds. PPP doesn't need to buy votes. Anybody needs to buy votes is APNU. APNU. Right now, they are paying people to go to the rally in Lethem. And I said, a lot of the two shows and others call me, what should we do? I said, take the jersey, take the money, go to the rally. We know how they're voting. I said that to them. Because a minibus man said to me, a lot of taking people to one of their rallies. And in the back, with all the people with their green and yellow T-shirt, bad-mouthing the government. It's a business. People go in there, if they make a money, some money, times are hard. I don't have a problem with it. So I don't have a problem at all with that. Just, you hear me ever criticize anybody going to their rally? People go if they get free beer, free food. I might go myself if they didn't run me there. If they wouldn't run me out, but they would run me out, I can't go in there. But I'll go myself. But I know that's it, because that was part of their plan. You know, Basil said that early. Don't worry with them. We can get bring in some RTs and others, and they're going to come back to the fold. They'll vote for us. Well, people are thinking differently, because when the free food done and the 5,000 done, you're back to joblessness and the broken promises. So this is it. I just want to end by extending our sympathies to the family and relatives of Jude Bentley for the tragic way in which he lost his life. We all hope that justice will be done impartially, and I don't want to say more because I don't want to politicize this matter. But we just hope that the same standards that are used for everyone else would be used in this instance too. And some of the media services that, had it been a PPP person, frankly speaking, they would have been camping outside of the police station and the hospital. I know how it happened, how it used to be in the period before 2015. They would have been camping out there outside the police station and others and giving running commentaries. A lot of them are silent. But we can't let their silence force people or to act in a partisan manner. So I hope that the police will act in a fair manner, treat this case like how they treat cases with ordinary citizens. Thank you.
Mr. Jagdeo, on ExxonMobil drafting a cabinet memorandum, I would not know because I was never in government, but you were. How far is this away from protocol, or is there any grounds for government to allow a foreign company to get into that sort of business?
It is unheard of, where you ask your representatives to bring to the cabinet your negotiating position with the other party. And then the other party drafts your negotiating position with them. This is the most unusual thing. If it is true, that's why I said it's criminal. And not just Trotman should be chastised for taking this to the cabinet, but the entire cabinet. First of all, they're not claiming that the entire cabinet approved this deal. You know, somehow, I think they're stringing Trotman out in the cold. So it's either Trotman did it alone, Granger should say now, Trotman did this alone, or he did it with the cabinet's blessing, because the cabinet memorandum should come. At least he should do the decent thing, since he puts decency next to his name. The decent thing, and tell us that. And then answer the next question. Now that you are aware, and so first of all, your government approved this deal. So let's end it there. So are you now aware that the negotiating position that came to you was drafted by the company with whom you were negotiating?
Well, it's a report that they commissioned themselves, so it has to be true, right?
Huh? They commissioned this report. That is why I'm saying that this is their report saying that. Imagine you commission your report to absolve you, and your report is really implicating them. Their report has gone even further than Global Witness in implicating them in this matter.
Okay, and so you mentioned government embracing statistics put forward by companies who you see get their bread and butter from oil companies. Are you saying that Rystad is one of those companies?
You draw your own conclusion. I was making a general statement. You check Rystad's history, and then you will tell me whether they've worked for oil companies or not.
Okay. On the local content policy, Kaiser News reported this morning about their confidentiality clauses. The local content policy mentions legal constraints that prevent the government from putting everything out into the public. Would you, if the PPP wins, respect such confidentiality agreements?
I've not read the report, but I scanned it. And really, it looks like it's drafted by someone from overseas for us. There are some, clearly. There is no big issue about local content policy. We have to have a legislation. The legislation is what matters, not the policy. The policy, people can ignore that because it has no effect of law. When you pass the legislation, and we're gonna do, you have to simplify it. What is it we're looking for from these oil companies to do? First of all, to make sure that they spend more in Guyana, using Guyanese labor and using Guyanese business. More business has to flow to our people. That's the purpose of a local content policy. It's a simple thing. You see, when you go into all these great complexities, etc., you lose the essence of what we're trying to do. So that is how it's going to happen. We will then have to bring all the local people together. And we'd have to examine where they have capacity and where they don't have capacity. In sectors that they have capacity in, like that are non-core, say like not the drilling activities or the building of an FPSO, we have to, then you can be a bit more liberal in allowing foreign investors because they have the capability. Right. But in areas where we can supply services, etc., we have to, almost 100% of those spending have to come to our people. It's as simple as that. And employ our people. If you can't be employing our people to come in here and do things that Guyanese have the comparable skills to do. That is as simple as that for me. So for me, I'm not starting off with these big, huge technical documents. I'm saying practical sense. So let me tell you, because I'd raised this once with Exxon. If you have to do with the big subcontractors, you have to get a 90 days credit. You can't get that from Guyanese companies because none of them have the deep pockets to give you 90 days credit. You have to pay them within 30 days. And that should be specifically outlined in the obligation of the company. So they have to do it. They have to do it. They can't make an excuse that they're not going to do it. They have to do it. And then lots of other issues. For example, comparable pay for comparable work. That is vital. So there, I just gave you one example of it.
With the exception of the Stabrook agreement, you said that you're going to seek to renegotiate all oil contracts, right? Does the exemption granted to ExxonMobil here also apply to the other blocks they have interest in, the Kaishore and the Kanchi block?
No, none of the other blocks. This is the one that's covered by this agreement. Those blocks, they have to come to the standard PSA.
And finally, you You might have noticed.
But not exemption.
We didn't say the word exemption, but so that's your word. Next thing you put that, Jagdeo said exempt, right? I'm just cautioning you, right?
Okay.
It's your word.
In Kaitra News Sunday edition, there was a front page comment. The newspaper has officially taken a stance on this type of agreement, calling for a 10% royalty. Does this modify your position on this?
The newspaper may do that, and I think it's within its rights because it has seen several documents. When you're going to be the government, you have to be a bit more cautious about making a promise, and then when you get in there, you can't deliver on it. That is why we're very, very cautious. Every single thing that we have promised in our manifesto, we can find the resources to do. So we don't want to commit ourselves to a figure. We said we have to get more from this agreement, right? That would be akin to, it could come in royalty, maybe higher taxes, whatever else, more local content, a whole range of other measures. But we have to get more from the agreement. We can't just set a figure. We have to review everything. And we would like to get our hands on all the documents that have been given to Trotman and the others to do our own assessment. How, because we want to do that review right at the beginning. We want to see all the documents and whether Exxon has fulfilled all of its reporting obligations too. Because there should be a detailed reporting obligation. And not just reporting, but that the information is accurate, and that when it comes to government, it doesn't sit on somebody's desk and ignore it, that it's being processed from a perspective of holding the company accountable. And possibly published, because I think there is nothing at the end of the year, if we're going to disclose and we're going to criminalize anybody who doesn't want to disclose, they go to jail. We can disclose how much money we collect for the year from every oil company. Why can't we disclose other cost obligations and other things, or regulatory issues? For example, not proprietary and the technology and all of that, but important issues that would allow civil society to assess whether right decisions are made. And in our manifesto, we want to make sure that part of the watchdog system includes civil society. Thank you. Thank you very much.